In this chapter, we're going to examine the institutional framework. The question is, what is the appropriate institutional framework to implement sustainable development programs in forest landscapes? Short answer is that there isn't an ideal institutional framework. Oftentimes, there is a need to come up with the design of new institutions that can take on board many new paradigms that have developed over the last decades related to sustainable development, and more so with the approval of the SDGs in 2015. So I invite you to dive a little bit in the case of FAS, Amazonas Sustainable Foundation. Join me in this story that has been produced by volunteers from Portugal who did a little film on the activities of FAS.
As pessoas também olhavam a gente como um grande desmatador assim da floresta, mas na verdade a gente só sobrevivia, né? Trabalhava com estação de madeira e legal na mata. Então todo dia eu ia para o mato com o destino de derrubar a árvore. E fiz isso durante 30 anos da minha vida. FAS é Fundação Amazônia Sustentável. Essa palavra sustentável que entrou na minha cabeça que antes eu não sabia. Para mim, sustentabilidade era, sei lá, no meu tempo, tirar madeira, eu estava sendo sustentabilidade para mim. Mas aí, com a chegada da fundação, não. A fundação fez com que as coisas acontecessem. Trouxe vários projetos, saúde, educação, e trouxe o conhecimento para dentro da comunidade e passei a ter a oportunidade de fazer outra atividade, não ser tirar madeira. Aproveitar a floresta de outra forma. E trabalhar no turismo básico comunitário para mim foi assim, uma oportunidade que mudou a minha vida. Não só a minha, mas da minha família toda.
Tenho uma família muito grande, né? Tenho 80 sobrinhos. Meu pai faleceu e ficou só a minha mãe, que já está idosa. E eu tenho a responsabilidade de ser o esteio da família agora. E a FAS trouxe o curso aqui e tive uma oportunidade de trabalho. Curso de produção sustentável, unidade de conservação. Curso voltado para a nossa realidade. Fazer que surgissem novos empreendedores dentro da comunidade. Hoje eu trabalho no projeto de pesquisa experimental, trabalhar com óleos vegetais e produção de açaí e vendemos a grandes empresas de cosméticos. A chegada da FAS, né, realmente mudou a comunidade, mudou muito o modo de valorizar o local, porque eu posso produzir, vender, mas viver em cooperação com a natureza. Tipo, eu vou tirar tanto, mas eu tenho que deixar tanto para gerações futuras. E isso, nossa, não tem nada melhor do que você saber que eu vou tirar aqui, mas meu filho, meu neto, meu bisneto vai saber que eu trabalhei com isso e ele vai poder trabalhar também.
Antes de eu ser uma vida de atleta, eu já tirava com um arco nativo. Sempre o arco e flecha foi dos indígenas. Pescava com meus amigos quando ia 7, 8 pessoas. Eu fui aprendendo a pegar as técnicas com eles, a olhar o que eles faziam e o que não faziam. Comecei a pescar sozinho, ia na minha canoa, pegava o almoço, 10, 15 peixes. E foi quando apareceu a FAS. Além de um grande desenvolvimento na nossa aldeia, a educação, saúde e outro projeto, trouxe a oportunidade de nos tornarmos atletas de arco e flechas. Antigamente eu não pensava no futuro que eu ia fazer ainda. Hoje eu vejo novas oportunidades e novos caminhos para preservar a nossa cultura indígena.
Viver sustentabilidade é um desafio para todo mundo. Em qualquer lugar você pode viver sustentável, mas é um desafio. Hoje eu vejo assim, a preservação em si, só da água e floresta, não acontece. Acontece se tiver a preservação também das pessoas que moram aqui dentro da floresta. Preservando as pessoas, dando qualidade de vida boa aqui dentro, não tem órgão nenhum que quer mais preservado isso do que nós que moramos aqui.
We decided to create FAS because of a couple of things. First is the limits of governments. Governments tend to be first very bureaucratic and very inefficient, and especially so in areas which are not dependent on big projects, but rather on a large number of small actions. So the bureaucracy doesn't deal well with those actions, and especially in areas which are remote, they don't have formal businesses. So it's very hard to come up with the paperwork necessary for governments to have the action. Governments are also short-term. Oftentimes when there's an election, a new government takes office, then they tend to redo everything and start from scratch. And sustainable development is not a short-term goal. It is a long-term process. So it requires continuity. So governments are not very well equipped because of those reasons. Existing civil societies, for most cases, have a difficulty in having a focus on solutions, on practical solutions, and are limited by the fact that oftentimes they have short-term funding for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And this project scale is not conducive to long-term sustainable development. Universities and research organizations usually focus more on explaining why it didn't work than coming up with solutions as of how it should work or it could work. And there's a general tendency to emphasize problems rather than solutions. And I'd like to illustrate that with a cartoon of Mafalda, who is from Argentina. In these 4 images, she first looks at the world a little bit preoccupied. In the second one, she says to the world, yes, don't worry, because in this very moment, there are thousands of people studying all your problems. Pollution, hunger, overpopulation, arms race, all your problems. So in the third one, in the lower left, she walks away as if she was pleased. In the last one, she says, well, I know there are more problemologists than solutionologists, but what can we do? So this philosophy of Mafalda is very much behind the origins of FAS. So we decided to create something new, something from bottom up, so we're 100% Brazilian. We've grown over the last 10 years to become the largest non-government organization of the whole Amazon. I think we're in a position to share some lessons learned on how to come up with the design of an institution that is both effective and efficient. So the design of FAS had in mind this idea of problem solving, solutions, and hands-on. This is part of our DNA. Part of our DNA also is a mission statement that we want to help people stay where they are and look at the drivers of migration to urban areas and see the extent to which we can reduce those drivers. And then from an environmental point of view, our goal was to come up with strategies to make forests worth more standing than cut. Because this is, in my view, the best way to reduce deforestation, is to make forests valuable today, not 10 years from now, and not in an abstract way. And this is the framework or the basis on which we designed an institution. And we didn't start from scratch. We had many other institutions that we studied, that we had personal involvement prior to the design of FAS. But we used some pillars. And let me now share with you which are the pillars of what I see as a successful institutional design strategy. First is governance. We have to have a strong board that provides input to our strategic planning, that provides connections, that allows us to to fundraise in different areas, in different regions of the world, and in different segments of the Brazilian society. So the board is very important, governance as a whole. So in our case, we have a board of administration, a fiscal board that deals with the accounting, and an advisory board. And then under these higher level governance, we have a professional team. It's very important to have a very professional team, and this is something that governments oftentimes have a difficulty in having because of the bureaucratic characteristics of public administration. So we have a turnover of about 10 to 15% of our staff per year. We do that on the basis of performance. So not only we have a turnover, but also we have a progress within the organization in a way that resembles private company. So to the extent to which our budget allows, we give incentives in terms of the professional development of people within FAS. Another element is no political engagement of the institution in elections and in local politics. This may sound something obvious, but for those of us who live in areas where governments are very important, it's very easy to get involved in local politics. And this applies to everybody in the organization. And so we have as our own ethos a commitment for not engaging in partisan politics. And this, I think, is a key element, because there are municipal elections in the case of Brazil every 4 years. And if you are on one side, the other is going to treat you as an enemy. So we work with all mayors regardless of the political parties. The same goes for state governments. We have a strategic planning that now is being revised for the next 10 years. So we have a 10-year long-term plan plus a 5-year medium-term and an annual plan. So we have 3 timelines in terms of strategic planning. And this is also an important element. But it's more a sense of direction. It's not a rigid plan, because we take on opportunities and developments that happen as we go along. So I think it's important to have a plan that gives room for flexible implementation. Another important element is developing capacities, capacity building, and recruiting the best staff and best collaborators in our team. And I have personally, as Director General, invested a lot of time in recruiting, because I think recruiting is a key element of an institution which is basically driven by people. So I think that's another important element. So myself, recruitment in the last stage, I interviewed the last 3 top candidates before the final selection is made. Another component of our strategy is partnerships. We have today 217 partners. Some of these are funding partners that provide us the finance. Some of them are technical partners. Some of them are partners in just doing things together. In order to deal with the complexity of the realities that we have in tropical forest landscapes, we have to have a holistic approach. And in order to have a holistic approach, this requires a wide range of expertise. And this wide range of expertise cannot come from a single institution. It has to come from partners. So that is a very important part of a success strategy, to build on partnerships. And partnerships are tricky. Having partners that trust you, that you share the results and you engage them in the design and in implementation is essential. And finally, transparency and accounting. It's very important to have indicators, and in our case we have 150 indicators that focus on both results and impacts. So we monitor our activities through a variety of indicators, and we have a very transparent communication of those results. Sometimes we have success, sometimes we have failure, sometimes we stay in between, but it's very important to be very transparent and engage partners in improving, because it's a continuous process of improving. So I'd like to close this chapter by saying that invest in the institutional design. If it's an existing institution or a new institution, it's very important to have key components of management that allow a program for sustainable development in forest landscapes to be successful. And there are many cases of institutions that are successful across the globe, so I encourage you to look at those institutions. Some of our reference material referred to a couple of examples, and do look them up and try to improve those institutions, because this is not a fixed recipe. It is something that has to be continuously improved over time.